Good morning. It's Monday, June 17th, National Take Your Cat to Work Day. Now, I record these from home and I work from home, so I don't know that I'm for sure the best person to comment on this, but I've seen Ruth in a variety of business interactions, and I cannot say that she would thrive in a work environment, like in an office. She has terrible phone etiquette. So I'm not even sure what she'd be doing all day. But if that's not the case with you, take your cat to work, I guess. And now the news. We start how we start here in America with a special episode about guns in America, brought to us by a Supreme Court ruling and a weekend of mass shootings. First, the Supreme Court. On Friday, the Supreme Court struck down a ban on bump stocks. A bump stock is an attachment on a semi-automatic rifle that replaces the stock, which is the part that rests against the shooter's shoulder. In a normal semi-automatic rifle, the shooter has to pull the trigger for each shot. With a bump stock, the shooter holds the trigger, and then the bump stock basically, bumps between the shoulder and the trigger finger. Essentially, a bump stock turns a semi-automatic rifle into something that shoots at almost the same rate as a machine gun, without actually turning it into one, because it is illegal for private citizens to own a fully automatic rifle. But a bump stock kind of circumvents all of that. Now, before I go on, if you're new here, hey, I'm Kim. I don't own any guns. I've shot guns before, but I don't own any, and that description of a bump stock is based on research, not firsthand knowledge. I do get a little frustrated when the topic of guns and gun laws come up, though, because what I just said there, I'm certain that some gun enthusiast is going to be able to find some tiny technical error and then immediately dismiss everything else that I'm about to say. Meanwhile, we've got people who don't know how ovaries work and can't even say period without blushing, making laws that take away choice and bodily autonomy. Those two things are not connected, but I can't not mention it. Also, yes, it is possible that there is a small technical error in what I just said. I am willing to accept that. I'm willing to learn if someone wants to explain to me the difference, but it does not change the truth of a bump stock. A bump stock makes a gun shoot faster without any additional physical exertion on behalf of the shooter. Meanwhile, I get the Second Amendment repeated me so often that it's almost as if it's the only amendment. But somehow those first four words, a well-regulated militia, don't seem to matter as much as just making sure you get that tech right. Okay, sorry, I needed to get that out of the way. Now we can continue. Bump stocks. Bump stocks were banned in 2018 by President Trump after the 2017 Vegas Mandalay Bay shooting became one of the deadliest shootings in modern American history when the shooter used a semi-automatic rifle with a bump stock to kill 60 people and injure almost 900 others, counting those that were hit by a bullet and also those that were injured in the panic that followed at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. 60 people killed. Almost 900 injured. And thanks to a bump stock, it all only took 10 minutes of shooting. And on Friday, on a 6-3 vote along ideological lines, the Supreme Court voted down that bump stock ban. Writing for the opinion, historical badman Justice Thomas wrote, quote, "We hold that a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock is not a machine gun because it cannot fire more than one shot by a single function of the trigger." Yeah, thanks to the bump that occurs between the bump stock and the trigger, even though the shooter just needs to hold down the trigger, there is still technically, mechanically, more than one pull on the trigger, even if that pull on the trigger is not being done by the shooter. And when I say this opinion fell along ideological lines, I mean, seriously, ideological lines. Because normally justices hand over their opinions and dissents, and they're serious on their own. However, Justice Sotomayor summarized her dissent from the bench, which is how you know she dissents with her whole chest, because summarizing your dissent from the bench is reserved for, I don't just dissent, I dissent like nobody has ever dissented a dissent before. In her comments, she said, quote, "When I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck." Adding, quote, "A bump stock equipped semi-automatic rifle fires automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. Because I, like Congress, call that a machine gun, I respectfully dissent. That respectfully felt like it was very sarcastic, really doing the Lord's work on that one word there, huh? Now, this has two ways of being dangerous. First, practically. We are a nation that, for a variety of reasons, has a mass shooting epidemic, one that no one with real power has any desire to change or make sustainable change. Because just look at what happened here. The president said, we're going to ban these bump stocks, and the Supreme Court just made a deadly weapon legally deadlier and more accessible because of mechanics. Also, because we have made so little progress in trying to curb this very serious, very American problem that we have, striking down that ban undoes the tiny bit of progress that has been made. Tells the world that we don't want to solve this. Not really. And in case you're looking for more proof of the way that this country does not want to truly solve this problem, this week Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will bring to vote a bill that will restore the ban on bump stocks. And, well, let's just see how that goes. Would love to be surprised. Would be so excited to be surprised. Would be so excited if later on this week I can be like, wow, I was really wrong. We'll see. And in the shadow of Friday's ruling, 2 people are dead in Texas after a fight broke out at a Juneteenth celebration on Saturday. At some point during the fight, someone pulled a gun and began to shoot. At least 6 people were taken to the hospital with potentially serious injuries, and the 2 that died were not involved in the fight. It's not even known right now how many guns were at the scene. In 2021, Texas's Governor Greg Abbott signed into law a bill that made it legal in Texas for most people over the age of 21 to carry a gun in a holster without a permit. And though it has to be in a holster, it can be carried open or concealed without a permit. And now 2 people are dead, and we don't even know how many guns were at the scene. Also on Saturday, at least 9 people were shot, including a 4-year-old, after what appears to be a random shooting at a splash pad in a Detroit, Michigan neighborhood. The shooter was found dead in his home from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. There is currently no known motive, with the shooter having no connection to any of the victims. That was not the only shooting in Michigan. 6 people were shot in a residential neighborhood, also in Detroit, just a different shooting. And in Massachusetts, 7 people were shot at a party. In fact, according to the Gun Violence Archive, which defines a mass shooting as one in which at least 4 people are shot excluding the shooter, this weekend saw 8 mass shootings. We're 169 days into the year, and there have already been at least 220 mass shootings. Now, this weekend's shootings did not, to my knowledge, include use of a bump stock. But the Supreme Court just told the country and the world that they're not that worried about what guns are doing in this country. They're more worried that the mechanics of a gun have their Second Amendment right seen. More mass shootings than we have had days in the year. It is long past time that we stop parsing language and stop putting dangerous weapons freely into the world based on a technicality. And that's it. That's the news. Hey, guess what? I'm making some changes to the news. If you're hearing this as a podcast, no changes to the show, just additions. First, you can find a video version of this podcast on YouTube. There will be a link in show notes because as I'm recording it, guess what? I don't know what that link will be, but it'll be in show notes. If you're watching this as a video, hey, it's a podcast too. Go to KimMoffitt.com/here's what's happening, and you will find links there. And as you may recall, there is also a Substack for this little podcast here. In the past, those posts have basically just been an email version of this podcast. Going forward, starting with today's post, those will be more focused on like one big story of the day. So new stuff. But what's not new? Well, more than Substacks, more than podcasts and videos, and the idea of putting a little bow tie on Ruth and bringing her to the office, because you are also just as great, if not greater, than all of those things combined. I'm proud of you.